Lest we forget Henry Clay. Today, I will be talking about a historical figure through multiple lenses: their life, their impact, their flaws, and how we should remember them today. For this project, I chose to use a biography written by scholars David S. Headler and Jean T. Headler. In this biography, it tells the story of Henry Clay, from the moment he was born to his grave, including his family and political life. You might be wondering who Henry Clay is, or in other words, the Great Compromiser. Served as Speaker of the House, Secretary of State, and a U.S. Senator during his long career. He was a lawyer by trade and a man full of charisma. As many said, people could not help but listen to his shrill, sharp, effeminate voice, though he was a figure who made significant moral compromises and criticized for the ethical ambiguities of his actions. Henry Clay was born on April 12, 1777, in Hanover County, Virginia, into a family of modest means as a son of 11 children. Orphaned at a young age, he worked his way up from humble beginnings, studying law in Richmond under the guidance of George Wythe, one of Thomas Jefferson's mentors, as well as studying under Robert Brooke. Eventually, he settled in Lexington, Kentucky, where he built a reputation as a skilled lawyer. After moving to Kentucky, he met his wife, Lucretia Hart. Clay's political career truly took off in the early 1800s. Speeches backed by such pluck won Clay election to the Kentucky House in his first bid for office in 1803 and served until 1806. Next, he served as senator from Kentucky from 1806 to 1807, and then returned to the State House of Representatives from 1807 to 1809. As Speaker of the House, he championed the American System, a bold economic plan to unify the country through protective tariffs, a national bank, and infrastructure development. Clay's greatest claim to fame came as a peacemaker. He brokered several landmark compromises, both deals illustrating his political genius and the moral complexities of his leadership. At the time of the Missouri Compromise, the U.S. was expanding westward, and the admission of new states threatened to upset the balance of power between free and slave states in Congress. Missouri's application for statehood as a slave state sparked fierce debate, as it threatened to tip the balance in favor of the South. Clay, serving as Speaker of the House, helped create a solution. Missouri would enter the Union as a slave state, while Maine would enter as a free state, preserving the balance in the Senate. While this compromise temporarily diffused tensions, it failed to address the underlying issue of slavery, merely postponing the inevitable conflict. In similar fashion, Clay returned to the center of national politics to tackle yet another crisis. As the U.S. acquired vast territories from Mexico following the Mexican-American War, debates erupted over whether these new lands would allow slavery. Clay, now a senator, proposed a series of measures to address the sectional divide. His compromise was a strong effort to balance the interests of the North and South, but it came at a cost. The Fugitive Slave Act, in particular, outraged abolitionists, as it forced citizens in free states to participate in the enforcement of slavery. In the years following Clay's disappointment at the Harrisburg Convention, he would be a living illustration. This living illustration was the fact that Henry Clay ran for president not once or twice, but 5 times and did not get elected once. Something to lighten the mood. Why did Henry Clay never win the presidency? Because every time he ran, he compromised his chances away. Henry Clay was a controversial man who publicly denounced slavery as a great evil, even when he owned slaves for most of his life and failed to support immediate abolition. He freed only a few enslaved people during his lifetime and continued to rely on the institution for his wealth and status. His willingness to compromise on slavery reflected his belief that preserving the Union was more important than addressing the moral atrocity that was slavery. As John C. Calhoun observed acidly, "You ought to have seen it, that it was impossible for him to take middle ground on abolition in question." Yet Clay persisted in attempting to tread that insecure middle path just to save himself. His role in the corrupt bargain of 1824, where he allegedly helped John Quincy Adams win the presidential presidency in exchange for becoming Secretary of State cast a shadow over his reputation as a principled statesman. And, as I mentioned earlier, his inability to win a single presidential election tarnished his image of, as a capable leader of uniting the nation. In the 21st century, we should remember Henry Clay as a complex figure, an extraordinary statesman whose compromises helped stave off national collapse, but whose moral blind spots reflected the limitations of his time. While he might be overshadowed by figures like Lincoln and Jackson, his vision for a unified and economically strong America laid the groundwork for much of America's later success. Henry Clay once said, "I would rather be right than president." Whether he lived up to that ideal remains a matter of debate, though his legacy shares how complex our history is and the imperfect people who shape it.